Hello and welcome to Richard Plays Games. My name is Richard and I play games. And welcome back to Planet Coaster. Welcome back to Avalon Studios. If you are new here, welcome. If you are returning, welcome back. If you do like the video, please don't forget to give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and maybe drop a comment below. I am currently asking for fake IP to use for our fake studios. So if you have any good ideas for some fake intellectual property that we could use to base some rides around, please do drop it in the comments below. It would be much appreciated. For those of you that are returning and have watched episode 2, you've probably just seen me delete Studio 1 and wonder, why did you do that? I did sort of hint at it in episode 2 that I was finding it quite tough to build within the constrained size of the soundstage, and as much as I wanted to sort of recreate this Walt Disney Studios in Paris style entrance and it be a little bit cheap and a little bit cheerful, because I felt like that fit into our backstory for Avalon Studios, that it was a working studio that they had converted into a theme park. So I thought they might, the opening of the park, it might just be a little bit not good because they wouldn't want to invest a huge amount of money in it, but I just wasn't enjoying working within the constrained space, and I couldn't create the vibe of what I was going for, which was that these were just facades made of wood and paint. I like to create quite detailed things, and there would be detailing in it, but I just couldn't create that vibe which I really wanted. So what I've done is I have created a new save file, so we still have Studio 1 and we can go back to it if I decide that this isn't the right way to go, but we've gone for a more fleshed out 1920s, I guess, like golden era of Hollywood style Main Street, very much stolen from Disney's Hollywood Studios in Orlando, Florida. A lot of the buildings are directly from there, yeah, I found it actually a lot more freeing. I once I deleted the studio and got out of the confines of the soundstage, I found it much easier to build, and I actually built things that I was actually very happy with. I was really happy with a lot of the stuff that came out, which I think was quite clear I wasn't at the end of episode 2. I wasn't enjoying what I was making, and I did say I had built a lot and deleted a lot, and sort of there was a lot of stuff that I hadn't shown. All of this here, apart from some stuff on the other side of the street, because we're going to focus specifically on the left side today, everything I've built is shown here, sped up and with the boring bits cut out. This is probably about 10 in-game hours of play. You probably notice it jumps around a lot because I don't really ever get to sit down for really extended periods of time. So it tends to be I sit down for an hour or maybe an hour and a half, so I'll record that. So you'll see a lot of jump cuts, as it's like each time I sit down and start something. But yeah, ever since I deleted the studio a lot, everything has felt, I'm much more creative. I'm really creating high quality, at least I think it's high quality stuff. There's much better creators out there than me for this kind of stuff, but I've really, really enjoyed the building process and using what I say Street View. Hollywood Studios is the only Disney World park that isn't actually on Street View, so there's a lot of photospheres, basically people's photospheres, which is great. There's a lot of them on there. Some of them look like they've been taken on a potato, like the camera quality is terrible, but some of them are really high definition, really high resolution pictures, so it's given me a lot of to work from. I do, there'll be a few pauses where I go back to look at the reference images and the photospheres, but I'm really quite happy with how this has turned out. So what we're building, like I said, it's the left side of the street, and this is going to be sort of, like in any main street on any major theme park, it's some dining and mostly shopping. Now, I've always found in Planet Coaster that people, or the guests, the peeps, they're not particularly interested in the shops. Hat's fantastic, the hat store, and Looney Balloons do get some interest, but I've never whenever I go and look at the guest thoughts, it's always, I don't want to go in just a memento, and I don't know if the game just doesn't treat the shops correctly. I'm not sure, but so I've dropped I think that's a Hat's Fantastic you can see the back of in this building at the end, and the other ones I'll drop more food based stuff in, but in a real world scenario there wouldn't be as much food on this sort of main street. It would be more retail. This building that we're doing now, that we're just capping off the end of the block at the end of the street here, this is actually a real building in Napier in New Zealand. So if any of you know of Napier, it is very famous, especially in New Zealand, for Art Deco architecture. There's some really beautiful examples of old Art Deco architecture that have been very well preserved, and it's sort of been created or kept because it's the town's big kind of tourist draw, is people come to see the Art Deco architecture. Now I have been to Napier myself and personally can't remember any of it. I spent 3 days there when I used to live in New Zealand, and as I was travelling home from the South Island back to Auckland, and the 3 days I spent there, the weather was terrible. There was a big storm coming through. Couldn't really get outside without getting absolutely drenched. I spent a lot of time sat in the local Starbucks, which was very, very nice, but not really what I went to Napier for. But unfortunately, when I then ran out of time to go back, so it's definitely on my list of things to go back and see. But this was all built from reference images, unfortunately not from memory, because I just have no memory of the architecture there. The Starbucks, by the way, though, is great. First Starbucks to see the sunrise every morning. So if you're really big into Starbucks, go to Napier. This isn't going to be a functional building. The doors are just going to be closed doors, and they're going to be we're going to pop an arch shape behind so that people can't see through the doors, because this is just a cap off the back of the hat shop, and the entrance is at the other side. Really trying to work on the detailing again. The Art Deco architecture, it's all very similar. I don't know anything about architecture. I'm not going to pretend to brag that I do, but these kind of straight lines, lots of little details, it's all very similar, but with the reference image I'm just trying to get as close as I could to that picture. In a minute, I don't like, I've used a couple of the adventure pack stuff works really well for some Art Deco or old school Hollywood architecture, and I use some of the gold pieces at the top there to create like a topper for the column, and then realize that it just doesn't look very good. So that this is me looking through essentially every column in the game, just trying to find something. Eventually I think this is one of the stucco column tops. I think it looks pretty good, so I end up plumping for that one. Moved a few buildings on the main street around, so some stuff that was on the other side is now on this side. I have started working on the right side, and that will come out in episode 4, and we've also started to work a little bit more on some of the rides. I say the rides, the 2 rides that we have in the sound stages. I've started to add sort of marquees over the entrance and stuff like that, and I'll get to that in a real-time section at the end of the time lapse. Using the pavement pieces again, I know I said in episode 1 that I didn't like them, and I still don't really. I find them kind of hard to use, but we're going to use the pavement pieces again just to create this kind of city style street and pavement. Tried to drop the planters that we created in episode 1 for the palm trees, and they were just too big, and I don't have as much space at this point in the park, so we've used the in-game planters here, these circular ones. Now they have the holders coming up, but for some reason they've made the holders really small, and none of the in-game trees apart from the birches actually fit within the part. So we've gone for flipping them upside down, so it still looks like there is some grass underneath, some dirt underneath, so that it looks like a planter, and then we can use these palm trees, which creates the aesthetic we want, which is old school golden age of cinema, Hollywood. These are some little sort of awnings that I made out of art shapes for a previous park. Obviously we get in-game awnings, but sometimes they're really big, and I just wanted something a little bit smaller to detail this building. So they're made out of art shapes, they're recolorable. If anybody wants them, just let me know and I can drop them in the drop them on the workshop, and people can grab them. This is going to be our main gift shop, though I think I end up putting a chief beef in here. But if you look at Hollywood Studios, this is a shop called Disney & Co. So just because we're just stealing good stuff, this is now going to be Avalon & Co. And I've created a sign for it, which we'll see at the end, which I made out of those really tiny art shapes, and taking some text and putting it into the game using billboards and using the art shapes on top. That took me a really long time. When I said this is 10 hours of gameplay, probably a good 5 hours of that were both the marquee for our first IP ride and this, because sometimes that whole thing just takes a really long time. But again, it's just creating smaller detailings that we're just trying to put as much effort and detail into these buildings as possible. These high-end parks, and I know I've kind of switched around from it being that this would be quite cheap to actually it's quite high end, because the studio decided, actually, we are going to invest some good amount of money in building our main street. They have so much detail, these high-end parks, and again, Planet Coaster, because of its scaling stuff, sometimes it can be hard to do smaller details because everything is so big, and sometimes you don't want huge big detailings, you want these smaller detailings. So these art shapes off of the workshop that are tiny are just really useful for creating these kind of detailings. I looked at I'm creating a topper here for the building, and I did look at the neon lights that are available in game, and again, scaling problem. They are massive, they're huge, they just don't really fit the styling. So I've kind of made this one out of art shapes. I'm not sure exactly how much I like it. The art shapes sometimes can look a little bit naff, but I've made it and I've tried to detail it as much as possible. So I'll leave it up there for now, and maybe I'll have a look on the workshop. Maybe something on the theme makers toolkit or something like that will look better. There is some nice Art Deco stuff on there. I haven't looked through it all. I've downloaded a few bits, but I haven't used any of it yet. But I think we'll look into that. We're just resizing this building because it was really big, and one of the reasons it was really big is I'd used some wall pieces, and once you use the in-game wall pieces, you're essentially at 4 meters, because that's the length of them. And at first, when I was building in Studio One, that was fine because I had limited space, and I decided to make maybe like big facades either side. Now that I'm doing a little bit more of a normal main street, I don't want this much space taken up by a single building. I want to be able to fit a few more in. So we've really downsized this building, and it is just going to essentially be an entrance into the Avalon & Co. Gift shop that we were building earlier. I've also moved that food and drink sign from one of the other stores that we created in episode 2 and moved it to here. Again, I think it just fits quite nicely. I wish there was more of a neon sort of sign that I could create, but there just wasn't really anything, so it still uses the in-game lit pieces. This is the final sort of building or one of the final buildings that we're going to use for this side of the street, and this is just a gift shop. I can't remember what it's called in real life, but it sits on this corner of the entrance to Hollywood Studios. So that's what I've kind of gone for. This one, it's quite intricate. This is probably the one I had the most fun building. There's lots of pieces to it, lots of different styling to it, and again, it came out quite well. I really enjoyed building it. You can see me playing around with colours there. One thing Planet Coaster does is different pieces, you can select the same colour on different pieces and get completely different colours. So I'm trying to sort of match the outline of the windows there with the framing of the windows on the lower floor. But the colours, even though I selected the same colour, they always end up looking the same. This building has a balcony around the edge, and I tried to use some of the in-game balcony pieces, and again it just didn't really look very good. So I thought, you know what, we'll just build our own out of fences, and I actually think it ended up looking even better than I had hoped. Whenever you sort of use these pieces not in the styling for which they're meant for, you always run the risk that it ends up looking a little bit janky. I need to come up with a better word than janky. I don't know where I stole that from. It looks a little bit dodge, but this one it came out looking quite good. With these main streets, right, like the whole idea is you're sort of supposed to be creating like a living place. The idea is that people should be walking through your main street, guests, and feel like they've entered a place that exists even when they're not there, and that people, you know, go about their daily lives, you know, that they're in this part of like Hollywood or whatnot. So creating these, like, the detailing really is what makes that or really helps that along. So things like flower boxes and the balconies having chairs on it or something like that. I know it sounds really stupid, but actually that's what kind of makes these areas give them the more lived in feel, which is what all of the major parks go for. They want you to feel like you've entered into a land. So like I said, we're gonna finish off the left side of the street today, and then once we finish the time lapse, we'll drop into a real-time section just to go through what we have made, and I will drop all the timestamps below if you want to skip through certain pieces and get to the glamour shots at the end, or just get into the real-time section as we walk through. But I do hope you stay to watch the time lapse, see how slowly I build everything. Just really trying to add as much detailing now to this as possible, because like we said, we want to make it feel like a real lived-in place. First time I've ever used another one of these, I think this was from the World Fair pack, like the Chinese items. It just worked really well. Again, there's a lot of that styling, I guess, you know, the Chinese theatre being the really obvious one, but a lot of that styling in old Hollywood, this sort of like oriental Asian styling, it just became really, as I looked through, I realized that piece fit quite well, even though it's mostly embedded in the wall. Even the bits of the you know, the little decoration that you can see, it kind of fits. And yeah, I guess that makes sense when you think about things like the Chinese theatre. It is a big you know, it had a big effect on, I guess, 1920s Hollywood architecture. This is the last building that we're doing on the corner here, just to cap it off and sort of integrate it into the soundstage next door. It's not a guest building, it's going to be a staff building in the end, but just something to, you know, like I said, cap off that the end of the street, so that it connects quite nicely to the soundstage, and you get that kind of flow between the two places. Doing a bit of path work here. I hate path work in Planet Coaster. I always tend to, or seem to, get to the point that just deleting one section of path will delete every useful bit of path I've ever put down in the park. But eventually we get there, and we just sort of create this sort of crossroads here, and I'm gonna go in afterwards and, you know, put all of the road markings down, you know, the lines and everything like that in the road, and probably drop some street signs in and stuff, just to give it that sort of additional bit of detailing. Just dropping a flower bed here at the end, just again, a little bit of capping off the end of the street. One thing I've noticed whenever I look at, or even go to Disney parks or Universal parks or big major theme parks, is that as areas tend to transition from guest area to backstage area, they tend to use plants as part of that transition. So, you know, you'll have maybe like a gate at the end of a road, or at the end of a footpath, and that gate is for only for cast members or for employees, but on the lead up they'll start to transition out through foliage. So that's just what we've done here at the end, just added that bit of foliage, just so it sort of becomes less of a place where you as guests would go, and it becomes obvious that it's more of a place for employees to start heading out to backstage areas. Just finishing off this building, really minimal detailing. Just again, I think this one is in Hollywood Studios in Florida. It's a building I've never even noticed, and I think it's designed that way. It's just the end of the street, so it's just sort of a very minimally decorated building, just to create like it might even be a staff area or a staff entrance or exit, and that's what we're gonna utilize it as. I think I've already dropped the staff room through there. These are those tiny letters that we were using in episode 2. I have dropped them in the description of episode 2. I can put them in again if anyone needs them, but they're just so good. Even the way that they're designed to, you can sort of select them on the grid system and then remove the grid piece to give you the free movement. Yeah, it just works very, very well. This is the last little bit of the time lapse, so we're just creating the marquee over the Avalon and Co. Gift shop. I've definitely struggled recently with, I don't know if it's just me, but the advanced move tool doing this kind of, rotational trick. It's not doing it very well, so this took me quite some time to get everything right and get the pieces how I wanted them, especially with these smaller art shapes to create the smaller detail. You can sort of see it took me a little while to line everything up, and I don't know if the advanced move tool was broken, if it's just me not using it properly. I'm not sure, but we get there in the end. So we just create this little marquee. That's the Bavarian window shutters and just some art shapes, and it does a pretty good job using the last of those art shapes to create this smaller details. And then we bring in our text that, in true Blue Peter style. Here's one I made earlier, a little Blue Peter reference for anyone that's not from the UK. It's a kids TV show where they made stuff and they would always just pull out one that they made earlier. But yeah, this is the sign that I made earlier. And I sort of play around with the placement of it, and in the end I decided actually the best thing to do is going to be to embed it deeper into the marquee. There we go, like that, and then remove this detailing around. And I'm very happy with how this turned out. That's possibly my favourite bit. Anyway, let's jump into a real-time section and go through the park and see it as it is now. Okay, and here we are at our ticket booths. Not much or really nothing has changed behind us, so we won't go through the entranceway again, but we will go through, and here we are at the beginnings of our Hollywood Main Street. Now, I did do a couple of buildings on the right side, but I've hidden them, and you'll see them in episode 4, which will be out soon, because I didn't want to spoil the surprise. But we're going to go through the Main Street, and then we're going to go round to the left and have a look at the marquee for our first fake IP based ride. So we'll just look to the left here. So this is our staff room, staff building entrance, just out of the way there. And then we've got this building on the corner that we made. I think a little bit more detailing I think I'm going to need, especially around the doorway. It's a bit plain, and I've kind of left myself not much room to put in much detail. So I need to kind of figure out exactly how I'm going to do it. But I'm very happy with how this turned out, and I'm just going to drop the lighting down to nighttime, and I think it looks really, really nice. One thing, when I looked at all of the photospheres of Hollywood Studios, the lighting on the Main Street is very yellow. So I tried to sort of do that here as well. I think that comes down to, again, just the time frame of the land, that sort of 1920s golden era of Hollywood. The lighting is probably likely to have been more yellow, and there's normally a lot of neon involved there as well. This is our Avalon and Co. So we've got our food and drink sign. I did chuck a Gulpy neon sign up on the roof there. I don't tend to use a lot of the in-game brand pieces, but I just kind of wanted something neon, and I thought, you know what, it looks good. I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure if I'll keep it or if I'll get rid of it, but I think it just helps create a little bit more atmosphere. This building does need a little bit more lighting though. It's a little bit dark, so we'll set that up. But I think what we'll do is we'll chuck some studio lighting on either side of the street to project across, and I've done that up there on the top of the Hat's Fantastic building, and I think, you know, I will do that in other places. The speakers up there, I know a lot of people do tend to bury or hide speakers in, you know, the ground or in buildings, but when I looked on the street view, they don't really actually do that. There are speakers just very obviously up and out all of the time, and I know it kind of breaks the realism a little bit, but well, it doesn't break the realism. It's more realistic to do it this way, but it breaks the, you know, the immersion in the land. In here, we've got our chief beef and our gulpy. Still just need to finish off some of the internal walls, but I'm probably not going to do much more than that. That building is essentially finished. Here is our Avalon & Co. sign. Very happy with this. It took a lot of time, but it just came out looking really, really good. I can't explain how small that is and how hard those pieces were to work with, but in the end we got there and it was definitely worth the effort. Again, entrance into our chief beef. Really happy with that. Do need a building here which will sort of merge into the soundstage just to cap off the street. And then we've got our hat shop here. And you know, just this block just finishing off around the end with our building from Napier in New Zealand just capping off the very end of the block. Yeah, really happy with this. Really, really like how this has turned out. I think this is much better than the studio one that I was going for before. Obviously, if you disagree, feel free to argue with me. But I think that this has got very much what I'm going for. Those lights up there, like I said, we've sort of dropped some studio lights in just to help illuminate this building. And again, I think that really, really does help. Right, let's go around to the left here because you can see there's a new roof over our queue here. I've actually redone the queue and it's very colourful. And then we have our first marquee over here. So that's just the dodgems in here, but actually what it is Clueless Clive's crazy comical cartoon caper. So Clueless Clive, I've decided, is a cartoon that exists in our in-game universe, which is, you know, uses a lot of this very bam wham, like old school Batman style on the screen. You know, these, I can't explain myself. I think you all know that, you know, the comic book styling, things like this here, and this is how I've sort of made these. So lots of stuff like this. So I've done that. Again, this is all made from art shapes. We've got the wait time here. So Crazy Clive's crazy comical cartoon caper. 25-minute queue. This ride accepts priority pass. We've got our safety information over here and a height stick as well. I might integrate somehow this a little bit better, but a lot of these rides in these studio parks, they really are just a marquee on some scaffolding. And not very much more than that. And I love this. I think it looks really, really good. Exactly kind of how I wanted it to look. Very cartoon style. And then, you know, they'll go into the dodgems over there and I will figure out how to sort of integrate that a bit better. But I'm gonna create some more of these, you know, action pieces, and they'll be along the sort of top of the cover of the queue here, and then maybe a few big ones on the studio building. But this is now Studio 1. This is now the studio number 1, and over here will be studio number 2. Cool. Let's finish then and get into a few of the glamour shots. And here we go. I do like everything that we have made this week. I feel like we're really starting to flesh out this park a little bit more. We'll get the other side of the street done in episode 4, so keep an eye out for that. But otherwise, thank you so much for playing along with me today. I do really appreciate it. If you have liked the video, please don't forget to click that like button and do subscribe to keep up with all of the upcoming Avalon Studios videos. But until then, I will see you when I see you.